Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to give a warm welcome to our new guest, Callie Rose Kelly. She is Mama Coach. And please welcome to our show for Fertility Warriors. Please tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hey Meredith, thank you so much for having me here this morning. So I'm a registered nurse. I've been practicing as a nurse since 2012. And I've been specializing in pediatric ICU nursing up until recently. After I became a mom and struggled with my own infertility journey to get to that point, I going through it, you learn that there's so many gaps in
Oh,
the
everything.
healthcare system, and thank God I had my nursing background to help me who's going through it search and research and advocate for myself, but there's so many people out there who don't have that medical background, and I was like, there's a need for this. I just didn't know how it looked, and then I
There is
became,
there is such a need for it. Such a need for it.
yeah,
I know when I was going through this, we didn't have people like yourself to help. 9, 10 years ago, when I was first starting on my journey, I would have loved to have somebody like you to help with learning how to inject yourself with the medications or
right.
what you're
Like the
doing.
clinic shows you for 5 minutes and then you get home or they are like, we set up your delivery for medications and you get this gigantic box of meds and you don't even know what half of it is. And they go over it so fast because they're seeing so many patients. And, that's just the traditional medical system at work right now because they're
Right.
seeing so many patients and you don't get that as much time as you feel like you need. So I want to be able to help other women going through infertility. They have questions. The on-call nurses take forever to call back, and they're getting more anxious when they don't need to be.
So how do people use your service?
So I've designed it where I can help someone who's just starting out trying to conceive all the way to somebody who's done multiple rounds of IVF and they're like, maybe I just need an outsider's perspective and maybe I don't know what to ask or what I need to um advocate for. So I have a traditional like fertility coaching package that goes over what's involved with infertility, and I tailor it to each person individually, wherever they're at on their journey. And we'll go over, how to optimize success. Obviously, there's no cookie cutter answer to say, you do this, you're going to get pregnant. We all know that's not the case, and we all try and fail multiple things. But I take a look at what they've done or if they haven't done anything, I make suggestions. I explain the lab work and why they're going for monitoring as frequently as they need to, because sometimes they're probably like, I can't take off of work. And, just to reiterate the importance of what they're doing and why they're doing it. If they don't want to go in the IVF direction or the IUI direction yet, and they want to try everything holistically, we can also tailor it to that approach as well. I like to find the medium between holistic and traditional, and they work really nicely together.
So basically, when you're starting off, somebody would call you up and then do you meet them at their house? Is this all
I
done over
offer
the
a virtual
phone?
or in home, so whatever works for them. If it's like, I need to talk to you right away, we'll do like a free discovery call, and then I'm like, I get women in when they need it. I'm pretty flexible with my schedule, unless I'm booked up, obviously, with another client. And I can do a virtual, like pretty much like within a few hours notice if that's something that they're looking for. And then in home, I can, a day or two, we can work something out.
And what do you do? What do you help with? Do you help with giving the injections or how to give the injections?
So that's also part of some of my packages, or they could just strictly be an injection only client that they're like, I have needle phobia, my husband's away, I can't do the shots myself, or maybe they're a single mom by choice, so they don't have a huge support system. And
Do they need a second set of hands or just a second, just somebody else there
exactly,
that
exactly.
that knows what's going on with the process and how to get there? What inspired you to do this?
I struggled with infertility for 2.5 years myself. And then I was also a member of Fertility Warriors, and I was seeing other women reach out and ask for this. And I'm like, this is a service I could be providing for other women. I just was working full time in a hospital, and I didn't really know how that looked like legality wise. So then I started to look into it. And then I found the Mama Coach, which is like a brand in itself. And I pitched them my idea because I'm the first one who's doing fertility support through the
Oh,
Mama Coach.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what is the Mama Coach as a business? What do they usually do?
We're we're nurses and nurse practitioners, and we provide like a holistic education-based nursing practice.
Oh, that's so
So
great.
yeah, we educate moms that are, already pregnant, like women who are pregnant and want some prenatal support. We have packages for them. We also have newborn support, especially if you've been struggling with infertility and all you wanted was to bring home that baby. Then you're like, crap, the baby's here. What do I do?
That's a major part of this. I know when I was blessed to have my daughter, we were so scared. We didn't know what to do, and especially being an older mommy, the little things, diapering a baby, cleaning the baby, washing the baby, all those other things that come as soon as you get out of the hospital and you felt like a train ran you down.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
have an
Us-
extra set of hands to at least guide through the process. We hired a nurse for 4 days because it was very costly at that time, but it was so beneficial.
Right. And it's just because, you get that support for a day or two, like probably even less now post COVID. They're just trying to get moms and babies out of the hospital as fast as they can and as safely as they can. But, that mom's like, okay, they said I'm allowed to take my baby home, but maybe you don't have grandparents around that can help and guide you or, family support. You'd like to think everybody has that, but it's not always the case. And even if they do have it, they may not want to hear a million different opinions.
Well, that's true too. I mean, a lot of times people feel it's very intrusive to have a second set of hands there for an extended period of time, and they want to do a lot of things then on their own. How long does when you work with somebody, how long does that last? Are there
I
time
have
frames?
I have different packages available. Sometimes it's an assessment, a consultation, and like 2 weeks of virtual support. Or I had like they can add on to that, or also offer packages that are a month and with always the option to add additional weeks if that's something that they feel like they need. But usually by a month of being home with their baby, they've got their routine
They
down,
go.
feeling confident, and I'm proud of them. And they're ready to fly by themselves.
It must be such a blessing when you finish with a client and they
Yeah,
get to that point of maybe graduating your services,
exactly.
to see them kind of go on their own.
Right.
What are some of the concerns that you see when you're going through this with women? What are their concerns that they talk to you about?
As far as fertility or just being a new mom,
Fertility, fertility.
fertility, uh, that the doctors aren't listening. The doctors aren't listening. Or they're pushing, say someone comes in and they're pushing IVF right away, but maybe they don't need to go to IVF right away. I'm a firm believer that when you're on this journey, you have to be ready for that next step.
That's
And
right.
nobody can tell you when that will be. So I want them to feel that supported and feeling that way and telling their doctors, no, I want to keep trying. And I know maybe it'll take longer for me to become a mom, but I'm not ready to move on to IUI yet. I'm not
Or
ready
whatever that next step
yet.
is.
I'm not ready for donor eggs.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready for that conversation.
It's a tough conversation. I know my first initial appointment was with a doctor at Northwell. And the first appointment, they wanted to run me over to donor eggs.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at that point yet. And
No.
I needed, and whether she was right or wrong, whatever it ended up being, I needed to get there on my own. I needed to know that I did everything possible within me
Right.
to take that next step, whether it was starting at the IUI, which I did. I did 7 IUIs and 4 IVFs.
If that's something you can handle emotionally, and because you're still adamant, like that's how you want to try, then that's something that your doctor should be encouraging.
And unfortunately, a lot of times, and I don't think they mean it badly, maybe they understand where we are and maybe they're just trying to tell us, look, you need to be at this point. But I think there should be different ways. I think you really need to get there on your own to mentally be able to go through this process.
Absolutely.
And I also think, and I've always said this, that mental health therapy is so vital while
Yeah.
going through this.
Now, while I'm not a licensed therapist, there is part of what I'm doing with these women is supporting them and
Yes.
talking to them, of course. But when I feel like they need to be referred out because they're looking for a little bit more additional support that I'm not able to help with, I have a list of therapists that I'm ready to like
Oh,
offer that.
wonderful. Yeah, and I think that's vital part of doing what you do because
Yeah.
it is a little bit of therapy when you're talking to these women. I mean, that's why I started initially, I started the group. I had nowhere to turn. 10 years ago, they didn't have all these Facebook groups to deal with IVF. A lot of the groups were out of state, where you couldn't really understand where they were going or what they were dealing with. And that's why I started Fertility Warriors because we needed something. We needed, it started out to be something very local,
Right.
because I didn't have anybody to turn to. I didn't know where people were treating locally or going to or what
Yeah.
was going on. And as we just kept growing and growing, you realize that people just don't want to feel that they're by themselves.
Exactly. Like years ago, I'm sure 10 years ago, like fertility was a taboo subject. Like you don't talk about it.
Nothing was talked about, and it was frightening because I went through it kind of on my own. I didn't have a therapist helping me go through it, and now I know how vital it is, even post having a child,
Right. Just
especially if you're going a donor route or a surrogacy route. um I just think it's so vital.
absolutely. What we're going through, it's hard. And even, you and I are both blessed with our families now. But the trauma is still there.
The trauma is 100% still there.
Yeah.
And we go through it, and there are days that I still feel it, and that's why I even come onto the group and I talk to people and tell them I'm still going through stress. I'm still, even though I'm past it to a
Right.
degree, there's still a lot that's involved, the little things that I learn every day. I wish I had somebody like you years ago to help me through this process,
Absolutely.
to get there. So that's why I think having you on board and being one of our new providers is so important to this process.
I'm so excited.
To
Really,
have the guidance, to have you, to have somebody to help with injections or kind of learning the ropes as to what to do, or to be able to ask those questions that, again, like you said, we don't have 5 minutes in with a doctor.
no. Some practices you don't even see the doctor when you're going in for, your monitoring appointments. And you just see the ultrasound tech and the medical assistant drawing your labs, and someone's going to email you later. For something so personal and so fragile, it's very impersonal because they just don't have the time.
That's right. Now, another question. Once you have that baby, for the people that are in the pregnancy support group that
Yeah.
I have, what's the next step? Do they call you once they get out of the hospital? How does that work?
So we can touch base while they're in their third trimester. Maybe they don't need a prenatal support. Maybe they're not attached to a birth plan, or if they don't even know that they should be having a birth plan. So we could touch base, and I follow up with my clients. Like if I know that they graduated and they're pregnant and they're over to their OB, I not that it's a fully open door policy, but they can always email me and say, I have a question, like, can you answer it? And if I can answer it in a one quick email, I'm available to, still support them through that. And if they're looking to book some sort of prenatal package, that's available. And then the newborn support package, maybe they don't think they need it. And then the baby's home and they're like, you know what, I really think I do need some support. They shoot me an email, they book a discovery call, and we get them on the calendar.
And then you come to visit, you go to their house, or again, this is all
Whatever they're comfortable with, it's very personal decision. Some people don't want anyone in their home, but I'm available virtually.
you're available virtually to do this. Now, how does somebody pay you? Is this covered by, is all out of pocket, obviously? How does
Right
that work?
now, everything is, out of pocket, but I do accept FSA and HSA cards. So if
What
they
is
have
that,
that,
actually?
a flex spending account, it's usually you set it up with your insurance, depending on your insurance plan. And
Oh,
it's funds that you're putting into this account that people use for their co-pays or their prescriptions, and they can use it for booking my services as well.
oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So great. Now, how did you start it? How many years ago have you been going through this when you were going through infertility?
So I became a mom in January of 2024. My daughter is almost 14 months now.
Oh, a blessing. Congratulations.
Yeah. So while
That's
I was
great.
home, thank you so much. She is literally my
Precious.
miracle. Um, but while I was home and trying to figure out what I was going to do for work after, because I was working as a travel nurse while I was pregnant, I knew I didn't want to go back to that. I wanted to be home with my daughter as much as possible, and that lifestyle doesn't allow for that. I was like, what can I do? And then I figured this out. So I started helping women, not fully as a mama coach just yet. Like I was just doing it kind of on the side. I took out malpractice insurance, and if I came across anybody who needed my services, I told them like this is something I'm offering. And then in October of 2024, I fully launched like my whole picture of my practice through the mama coach.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's really just, it's such a great service to have. In terms of a lot of the complaints that I hear from women that the doctors have issues with their BMI. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I don't think they should be turned.
As a nurse.
BMI plays a role in the like anesthesia perspective of, safety. I think that you want to optimize a healthy lifestyle. I don't think they should be turned away because of their BMI, because honestly, BMI, it's not an accurate picture of your health. It's just a number. Based on my BMI, I'm obese, but I'm not if you look at all my other numbers put
Right.
together. So I think that I could help a woman who maybe was turned away from a practice find that practice that's not going to turn her away. And then we start making some modifiable lifestyle changes. I'm not saying that she has to lose X amount of pounds, but let's make sure she's practicing a healthy lifestyle.
What about the people that ask, because as you know, since you had been a member of the of Fertility Warriors, a lot of people ask, is it okay to have that one drink? Is it okay to, go to that wedding and dance?
Yes.
I want to hear your opinion on these things because we often hear from the doctor's perspective. I want to hear from your perspective.
I think that if they want to have that one drink because it's gonna, make them feel good in that moment, then do it. Do I think they should go out and have 7 drinks every single night while
No, of
doing?
course not.
Absolutely not. Nobody should be doing that.
Right,
But I think that there has to be a balance in this because we still need to live our life while going
right.
through infertility treatments. I like high intensity working out, but my two of my first doctors, they told me I needed to stop it. And I listened. And you know what? My mental health suffered. I didn't find a form of exercise that I enjoyed. I gained a lot of weight, and like many of us on our journey, you need to take a break. So
Do.
I took that break. I told my husband we're not talking about fertility. I don't want to look at anything to do with it. And I did that for about 6 weeks. And then I was like, I'm going back to CrossFit because I enjoy that and I want to start living my life again. And I did. And guess what? I did CrossFit. I obviously I stopped working out during my 2 week wait for
Right.
my transfer,
So you
uh,
did. So this is important. During that 2 week wait, because somebody on the site recently just said, oh, during my 2 week wait, is it okay if I have a drink? Or is it okay can I still work out? You know, I did the opposite. Um, I literally left my job at some point to go through my last round. And I literally put my feet up for 2 weeks.
Right.
Um, I know everybody has a different mindset. Some doctors say, go out and do what you normally do and walk and, live your life. I want to hear what you have to say on that.
I think that with everything, it's modifiable.
Right.
So I don't think it has to be one extreme or the other.
Okay.
If you putting your feet up for 2 weeks is what you felt like you needed to do to optimize your chance of success, that's a personal choice, but
Okay.
I don't think it was necessarily required for success. But that being said, if that allowed you to have your mind at ease, to meditate or whatever you did during those 2 weeks to have positive thoughts, then that is what worked for you. For me, it's getting outside, it's going for those walks. I Walking my dogs is very therapeutic for myself. So I made sure I was walking my dogs during my 2 week wait, even though I couldn't go back to CrossFit. I I chose not to consume alcohol, and I encourage women not to consume alcohol
In
during the
those 2 weeks.
week, 2 week wait, just because you could be pregnant, and we all know that you shouldn't consume alcohol if you're pregnant. That is a blanket statement.
See, you're
So,
saying that, but then there'll be people,
who said that one glass
and
of
then there'll be people, and I see it on the groups all the time. And I'm like, that's why I always tell people you'll get a zillion people that will tell you it's okay. But then there'll be, you have to do what's in your heart.
Right. You and I both know, like, you could, the doctor's going to say one thing and they're going to walk out the door and do another. I'm, I'm not going to say, like, I won't work with you if you're not going to absolutely abide by what my suggestions are, because that's not realistic, nor is it fair to either of us. But I feel like you sought out my services because you're looking for my education and my opinions, and I've come from an evidence-based practice. Like, as a nurse, that's how I practice. So there's research to support most of
Right.
most of what I'm encouraging these women to do.
And it's tough because you'll always have the people that'll hear something else. Oh, my mother, she smoked cigarettes or drank wine and did all this and everything was fine. And it's hard, and I get this whole process is hard because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a process I know I never thought I'd ever have to deal with. I know all the years my mother, we would either be at North Shore Manhasset for something, and we'd see the fertility office there, and she'd be like, "Oh, one day if you ever need it," and I'm thinking, "Mommy, no, never." And then the next thing you know, that's where I ended up going.
Yeah.
I know it's a journey that many of us never thought in a billion years we'd be on or have
No.
to be on,
I
you
was
know?
so ignorant before I realized this was the path that I would have
Yep.
to take to become a mother. And I was like, I get a regular cycle. I'm gonna be just fine.
Yep.
And I used to joke, my husband's a little bit older than I am, and his friend group obviously is older than I am. And I would be like, I have plenty of time. I'm not in a rush to become a mom. You
Yep.
guys are all older, and then I was the one who ended up having all the problems.
And me too. And then somebody once said, "Oh, I was in my 30s. Oh, you should freeze your eggs." And I thought, "Oh, like I'm not gonna have to do that." And then when I got to that point, I'm thinking, "Oh, wow, that's something I probably should have taken into consideration."
Or like when you're young and you're not making any money yet because you haven't started your career and you hear about, maybe I'll donate my eggs to make a few thousand
Right.
dollars.
Right.
And like I did have that thought years ago.
I
And
thought about it.
right. And I'm like, if I would have went through with the screening, I would have known I was going to have a problem later on in life. But,
And
you
you never think about that, but now that we're here, what's the best piece of advice you could give someone going through this?
piece of advice. Take it one day at a time, one appointment at a time, and don't get too far ahead of yourself. that's advice I need to start practicing myself. I'm considering going for another IVF transfer, and I already think 10 steps ahead because as women, we're constantly planning,
That's right.
and you have a million tabs open in your head, and you're overwhelmed for whatever's going on in your outside life. But when you're on this infertility journey, you're not alone, and just take it one day at a time.
And that's why I started Fertility Warriors, because I didn't want to make anybody feel that they were going through this by themselves, and that they're not alone, and that we're here to support them.
Right.
I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you,
Um,
Meredith. This was
I think
great.
it's so important to have you with us, and the fact that you give this support to not only women going through the fertility process, but post fertility when they're pregnant, which is so vitally important, which
Yeah,
I've been through and I know, and it's hard. And we need people, more people like you, to make feel people that they have a hand to hold,
absolutely. I'd
and that
love
they're
to be
there
that
for them.
support system for them. I would love to be able to, teach them how to advocate for themselves.
So how do people get in touch with you? What's the best
Uh,
way to reach you?
I can be found on my website. They can book a free discovery call with me. I have an Instagram and a Facebook page that they could always reach out through DMs. I'm pretty much accessible all day. Maybe it takes about an hour for me to respond back, but I want to be there to help them.
Wonderful. And you're also in our directory.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for setting that up. I think it's a great resource for these women.
Great. Listen, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll speak again soon.
You too, Meredith.
Bye bye.
Bye.